One of the best things to come out of the Viking Age were the Viking ships. Man, they could sail everywhere, like here to Greenland and North America in the world's biggest modern Viking ship, Draken Harald Hårfagre. In this video we'll talk about how the roots of the Viking ships go back to the Stone Age even. We'll talk about Viking ships buried in great royal tombs like here in Uppsala in Sweden. I'll talk a little about the Germanic tradition of burying ships like here at Sutton Hoo in England. And of course we'll talk about the biggest Viking ship of them all, Ormen Lange. But we'll start off with how the Viking ships were built and what made them so advantageous to raid and sail and make warfare with. Because this all started a long time ago when we look at how they were clinker built with planks overlapping each other, boards as we call them, which not only made them sail like dragons at sea, but they were also beautifully made with lines and a design that was really timeless. The clinker build made them sail with the waves instead of against or through the waves, which also was advantageous when it comes to speed. I even got a friend who took a Viking ship planing, meaning he went more than 15 knots even. Now the biggest advantage of the Viking ships were their long keel and that they could go into shallow rivers and disappear just as easily. They were a menace to the Frankish kings and the monasteries. And with these ships they could sail to the far corners of the world, and indeed they did. They were skillful sailors. But I'll tell you a secret here now, because there's one thing with Viking ships that has roots going really far back in time in Scandinavia. We can see it in all the rock carvings that we got so many of all over Scandinavia that really depict the evolution of what turned into be the Viking ships. It's got to do with the Scandinavian hunter-gatherers who themselves had boats out into the open sea 9,000 years ago. It's amazing really, especially when you consider how far north Scandinavia really is. Meaning Antarctica if you turn the globe around. And this is where they survived. And how did they do that? Well, the technique is really amazing. It's actually closely linked to the bidarka of the Aleutian people in the Bering Strait. But they used it much later and it could be related even. I'll show you. You see the way the bow in all these boats going back thousands of years were designed made them able to break waves much easier. And this is what moved on when you see through the Iron Age and the boats we have found then, all up through the Roman period to the Viking Age. It's the same principle on how to sail with the waves instead of through them. So let's get back to the archaeological digs. The boats that have been excavated, like here in Denmark, where the biggest one of them all, the Roskilde 6 boat, was 36 meters. That's about 118 feet. And the Viking ships came in all sizes for all different uses, but the warships were the biggest, and we can see going from even before the Viking Age and through the Viking Age that the ships only got larger and more beautiful. I'll put up some links below so you can see all the different ship types and different time periods. But even going back to the Bronze Age, there were these stone circles all around in both shapes, both for ceremonies and burials. It's really cool, it's a really long tradition this. And in the migration era, you have the Sutton Hoo burial, the boat burial, as we can see an animation from here from the British Natural History Museum, on how they would bury these mounds. But bear in mind the Anglo-Saxon boats were different from the boats of the Viking Age, and I think that has something to do with geography and how far north Scandinavia is. And really the mound that you see here, I've talked about this, how they used a lot of logs and timber. Like in the biggest one of them all, the Raknehaug in Norway, they used 75,000 logs stacked like a pyramid from 30,000 trees. It's just crazy how big that thing is. Check out my video there on that if you want to. And mind you, Viking ships are still being found with georadar, and soon I believe a lot more will come. They have georadar from drone with good enough resolution. And I'll show it towards the end of the video when I went hunting with Peter Stormare in America for a Viking ship with georadar. So let's have a look at some of the larger Viking ships, and especially the largest one we know of, the Ormen Lange. It was huge, probably close to 50 meters or even longer. And I believe I know where it's lying today, which I talk about in the Pyramids of the North video. Because it was one of the victors, Eirik Ladejarl, who took that ship back to where it was built in Trondheim. And at this time in the Viking Age, we also see a lot of runic inscriptions with Viking ships on stones, and even coins here, as you might see. The top 4 ones are from Dorestad and are probably modeled below in the, well, by the Vikings when they coined or made these coins. And even towards the end of the Viking Age, we can see in the Bayeux carpet, the famous one from 1066, well, it was made after, so this is actually from after Viking Age. But look at this ships here. There are so many in this carpet. It's amazing to see. And it's really fun to see even later after the Viking Age here in the 13th century. We have a runic inscription of ships in Bergen. And you can even see the weather vane that was important in the Viking ships on one of them there. And you can even see drawings from about the same time. This is 200 years after Viking Age in terms of the evolution of the Viking Age, from the stave church of Fantoft, which actually was burnt down in the 90s by some really angry black metal musicians. And not only that, but the design and the shipbuilding traditions continued for centuries on afterwards. Here is the Nordlandsbåt. One photo from 1890 here, and even in Bjørkedal on Sunnmøre, close to where my family is from actually. There have been boat builders who are really old now actually, but they say they've kept their traditions of building Viking ships for 1,000 years. Kind of cool boat, huh? And these 2 elderly boat builders in Bjørkedal, they helped to build the Myklebust ship, which is a pre-Viking Age ship. It's really, really big and cool. And this year they can't get it out of their great nice museum in Nordfjordeid because it's too shallow. They have to pay $50,000 just to get it out, so they haven't been able to this year. But fear not, if you want to be a crew on a Viking ship, there are plenty of options. If you go to Oslo or to Denmark, Roskilde and Copenhagen, there are many, many good ships, so you can have that great Viking experience of being aboard a Viking ship. And this Draken Harald Hårfagre sails all around the world. I know the ship owner, and it's a great way to experience riding a Viking ship. And I'll leave you now with a great experience of mine 3 years back when I ventured with Peter Stormare and fellow Norwegian, or actually Norwegian American from Minnesota, to look for a Viking ship in North America.
Down, walk that man guard. Can we do that for the georadar to work?
Of course. Don't you hate boss in Norwegian?
All right, great. Please.
Yeah, we'll be up there.
Yep.
I'm not going to reveal how that went, but if you want to check it out, it's called The Secrets of the Viking Stones on Discovery and Science Channel, or American Runestone on Viaplay in Scandinavia. And I'll leave you now with the great photos of painter Anders Kvåle Rue. Link below. Man, I like his depictions of different scenarios in the Viking Age. I leave you now, but I hope you've enjoyed this. I mean, there's a story here from even before the Bronze Age, up until the Viking Age and even modern times. That's something to think about. Take care.